You should celebrate yourself every day, but some days you should celebrate with jewelry. Whether you want to commemorate an unforgettable moment or just bring some added sparkle to your collection, Blue Nile can offer you expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com today and experience the ease and convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
Ah, motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs. I am your host, Tara Clark. Here on Modern Mom Problems, you know what we're trying to do. We're trying to solve the world's modern mom problems. And if we can't do that, hey, at least we're having fun talking about them. And that's what we're going to be doing today. This is a solo episode. I am flying solo today. And we're going to be talking about, drum roll, please. We're talking about modern mom problems. Big surprise. So, usually I speak about modern mom problems as a guest on other people's podcasts. People often bring me in as an expert, and I'm using that in quotes, as an expert talking about Tara, what are modern mom problems? What are some of the challenges that parents are facing today? What's different between the world now in 2024 versus a generation ago or 2 or 3 generations ago. And I often speak about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that today. But you know what really caught my eye? I was scrolling through Threads, as I do, because I love Threads. It's like my favorite new social media platform. So there was a post that I was pulling up. Here we go. Here was a post that I had seen yesterday, and it was by a woman who's an author. Her name is actually Candy Steiner. So I'm going to give a shout out to Candy Steiner. And this post really caught my eye and it resonated with a lot of people. I'm going to read it to you in its entirety. And I think you're going to know why we're going to be breaking this down today. So here we go. Candy Steiner's post. In my short 12 weeks as a first-time mom, I have seen moms on Threads be judged and shamed for formula feeding, sleep training, co-sleeping, introducing solids too early, potty training too late, breastfeeding too long, not breastfeeding long enough, having a young baby that sleeps through the night, only getting their baby to sleep while contact napping, going back to work too early, going back to work too late, going back to work at all, staying home and deciding not to go back to work. I'm exhausted, she said. And then the thread also had a second part of it where she says, I'm looking to build a community of positive moms around me, the ones who are doing the best for their kids and their families and support other moms at the same time. I'm looking for moms who offer advice and a listening ear without feeling the need to shame or judge or explain why their way is the only way. I am looking for moms who support and encourage each other. Let's be friends. Well, on Modern Mom Probs, on my Instagram account, on this podcast, everything. That's everything that I'm about, right? That's why we're here doing what we're doing. And I want to talk about all of these things. And at any given point, I have felt all of these. And based upon the reaction that this post has been getting, a lot of people feel the same way too. And as I've matured as a mother, matured as a person, I've luckily been able to let go of so many of those social expectations that people are placing on us, right? So when my son was born, I had it in my mind. I was like, I have to breastfeed. I have to do this. That's what we're supposed to do. This is what I need to do. And I had a really hard time getting him to nurse initially. I remember I was in the hospital with him. It was probably a day or 2 postpartum. And I had the meanest lactation specialist. She grabbed my breast and she pinched it really, really hard. She forced the baby's mouth in there. And I was like, this really hurts. And at that point, I don't even know, maybe it wasn't even working at that point. And I was like, why is she being so aggressive to me? And I mean, this is what I was thinking in my head. Obviously, I didn't say anything out loud about it, but I just couldn't believe it. I was like, there has to be a better way than this. And then because my son, long story short, had been in the NICU for a few days after he was born, he was already getting formula feeding anyway. And so when we brought him home, then I really worked on the nursing, and finally it worked. It clicked. And then I was like obsessive that he wasn't eating enough because of it. So then I started pumping into bottles so that I could like see how much he was getting, so I could like quantify it, because I was like a little OCD when it came to his feeding schedule and all of that. So I was like trying to nurse and I was trying to pump. And then by the time he was 3 months old, we were traveling down to Miami, and I was like, you know what? I feel like we should like also introduce formula. So my son nursed, and he had formula, and I pumped into bottles, and all of those things. And also, once we got down to nursing, he loved it so much that he didn't want to give it up. So he nursed until, you're not going to believe this, but I'm just going to tell you anyway. He nursed until he was like a year and a half, nearly 2 years old, because he just found it so comforting, and it was nice. And we used to snuggle, and that was our bonding time. So here was a kid who at first I couldn't get him to nurse, and then I couldn't get him to stop nursing. And now it seems like ancient history thinking about that in retrospect. But I was upset about not being able to nurse at first. I felt the pressure that I needed to be able to do it. Then I was like, he's not eating enough. And then he was eating enough. And it's just so overwhelming, all of those different thoughts that are going through your head. You feel the social pressures, whether at the time it was Facebook groups, because Instagram didn't really exist when it came to parenting advice. Back then, it was mostly Facebook groups. And so you feel the pressure from that. You feel the pressure that you're reading online. And really, you have to just go with your gut. And I said to myself, you know what? If I want to introduce formula, I'm going to introduce formula, and I'm not going to feel bad about that. If I want to stop nursing, or if I want to do extended nursing, I'm not going to feel bad about that. And so, you know what? He was fed, and that's the most important thing. And that's what people often say, right? Is that fed is best. And now he eats whatever kind of garbage stuff that he eats anyway. Like, the other day he started eating Takis. I was like, how did this kid go from having an all beige diet where literally it was just like French fries and chicken fingers, and now he's eating extra spicy Takis? I was like, what alternate universe am I in right now? And he still does eat a lot of beige stuff, so I can't say that he doesn't. But on the off chance that he also does the Takis, I just thought it was so wild. I was like, who is this child? But let's go back to the mom shaming, right? We feel that we can't ever win, right? It reminds me of the monologue in the Barbie movie when America Ferrera's character is saying women can't win if they do this, or if they do that, or if they do that. And moms oftentimes are in a very similar position, especially when it comes to advice on social media. And so, we're trying to get our children to sleep properly, and we're trying to get them to, whether it's sleep all the night. I have to tell you the craziest story about the first night my son came home from the hospital. So we're going back to newborn days. We brought him home from the hospital. That was a Friday night, because I remember it exactly. He was born on a Tuesday. We got discharged on a Friday. And by Friday night, we were home. And I had said to my husband, oh, I read somewhere that babies need to be able to sleep on their own by themselves. And so we put our son down in his crib, and he proceeded to scream for hours. And my husband and I were looking at each other like, oh my gosh, what do? We want to pick him up, but we're not supposed to pick him up, because you're supposed to let him sleep, and then you're supposed to let him cry. But then he's also like 3 days old. And so we didn't know what to do. And we were like frozen with fear. And so then finally we're like, oh my gosh, no, like how ridiculous. Like, pick up this baby, snuggle him, give him the love that he needs. And that's exactly what we did. So we picked him up and we snuggled him, and he slept on my chest. And I know I probably shouldn't say that, because that's not sleep safety, but I'm going to just say it now between us as friends. And he slept on my chest, And then he fell asleep, and then I was able to put him down properly into his bassinet. And I just never forget that first night, not only because it was like burned in my brain with the screaming, but also it was because my husband and I had this preconceived notion that I had read that the babies need to sleep by themselves, or that they need to sleep on their own. They need to be able to self-soothe. He was 4 days old. Like, he was not ready to be self-soothing at that point. I mean, talk about fourth trimester stuff, right? He probably should have like still been in my body at that point. So that was when I really started to think, I think we need to trust ourselves. And that I still carry on as advice. Trust yourself. I know it's wonderful to read everything, right? I mean, for this job, I read a ton of parenting books, and obviously there's proper advice, right? There are certain things that we need to do when it comes to sleep safety, food safety, choking hazards, all of that. But you need to read through everything and take what advice that you see and you read, and know that there are some things that you absolutely have to follow, like car seats, absolutely have to follow those things. And then there's other things like maybe putting your newborn baby down in their bassinet while he's screaming wasn't maybe the right advice for us that day, right? So you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to weed through the things that are absolute must-haves and must-dos, and the other things that are like sort of nice to have. And then even people say that about co-sleeping, and I'm not saying with infants or newborns, but with toddlers and older children. Like our son, when he was a toddler, he actually slept in his bed really well, and we would put him down when he was 2-3 years old. He'd sleep through the night. It was great. And then it was only once he got a little bit older, maybe like more like 4 or 5, that he felt the need to come into our room and co-sleep with us. And, occasionally he even still does that today. And I often say to my husband, it's okay, because he only has a childhood once, and he's going to grow up before we know it. And then we're going to look back on that time fondly. Now, when you're in it, you're like, oh my God, no, because it's exhausting and you don't get any sleep, and you're sleep deprived and they're sleep deprived. But we obviously encourage him to sleep in his room as much as possible. But I try not to get too upset when he comes into our room, because I think, I'm going to soak up all of these snuggles as much as I possibly can before he's just like, okay, Mom, where are the car keys? And then I don't see him for the rest of the day. So I'm just still trying to love on him and snuggle him and keep him, little as long as possible. And if he needs us, he needs us. That's what I think. At least he feels safe enough with us to be able to come and co-sleep. And so if you do that, it's okay. And if you don't, it's okay too, because it's not on any one of us to impart judgment on anyone, right? Everyone's family situation is different. Everyone's personality is different. Everyone's children's temperaments are different. And so what we could do is, what can we do here, right? We're supportive. We can be supportive and listen to my story, and I'll listen to your story. And if I do have some useful advice, then I'll share that. And that's where it should go. It shouldn't come from this sense of self-doubt or deep, deep insecurity that the judgment that we often face online is coming from. Many times people are like, well, why is there so much mom shaming? What is this about? And really, the shaming a lot of times is that people are trying to validate their own decisions. And so they say, if this is how I do it, it must be the best way. And they want to impart that as much as possible. And I see where they're coming from, sure, but people have to acknowledge that that's the case, right? Life is not one size fits all. Parenting is not one size fits all. And we have to understand that and respect that. And so I don't know why oftentimes there's so much vitriol and concern for how certain people are parenting other people. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people maybe do make bad decisions in parenting. Leaving your child in a hot car is, for hours or, any extended period of time is legitimately bad parenting, right? Abuse, bad parenting. Neglect, bad parenting. So there are no two ways about that. I mean, I'm not arguing that, of course. But what I am saying is that if people are trying to make their own decisions where they say, we want to do baby-led weaning, and then another family says, okay, that's good for you, we're going to do only purees, then that's fine. Then everyone needs to be able to respect the other's decisions and then just go through with it. And now my son is on the cusp of turning 12 years old. And so, I've been at this parenting gig for a while. We've got, to see our fair share of parenting situations. And like I said, I read a ton of parenting books and I speak to a ton of parenting experts and content creators and moms and just, all the peoples. And the one thing that I love to see, especially lately, is how many people are saying, you just have to parent your own way. You can't always listen to one expert or another expert or whatever. Because even someone like Dr. Becky, not every single bit of advice that she gives is applicable to my life. And it might not be applicable to your life. And now she has a lot of really sound advice, but not every single situation fits you. And that's the case when it comes to whether it's social media content or advice from other experts. It's like, if it doesn't apply to you, then just move on. You don't have to comment in on everything. You don't have to get into the weeds on everything. And I think going back to what I was saying before is that many times it's because people are trying to validate their own life choices, that's where they are fitting themselves into other people's lives and choices. Now, we only have one child. I'm an only child with an only child. And I love having one little guy. He and I are best buds and we get to go on adventures together and we're able to do really exciting things and see a lot of exciting things together. And maybe if we had a larger family, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. But if we did have a larger family, then we'd be doing different things together, if that makes sense. And so I don't look at larger families and think like, oh gosh, like I could never do that or whatever. It's like, good for them. Like, biologically it worked out for them or financially it worked out for them, or that was the choices that they wanted to make. Like, rock on, dude, like take your family and have a fantastic time. And I would hope that people would say the same thing for our little family. And so we don't always have to, constantly try to bolster up our own life choices. And we could be confident in the choices and the decisions that we've made. And so that's what I really wanted to impart today, is that your life is not one size fits all. Someone else's is not. And we need to be able to come together and support parents, particularly moms, in our journey, because I don't have to tell you, it's not easy. Not one phase is not necessarily easier than another phase, or, well, I could say some phases are easier than others. No joke. I'm gonna redact that, because when my son was a toddler, he was a very challenging toddler. He had huge tantrums. And my husband used to say, jokingly, he would say to me about my son, like, oh, just be 6. Just be 6 already. Because in his mind, he was like, 6 is like the golden age where you're out of that kind of behavior, right? And so now I lovingly think back at that, because my son is almost 12. And I think, gosh, 6, like that was 6 years ago. Like, how crazy. Here my husband was like, oh, just like aging him up, mentally aging him up. And now I'm like, can you imagine that was 6 years ago? It was half his life ago. But I can say at this point, being a tween is much easier than being 2 and being in the trenches, because it's not as physically demanding. It might be a little bit more mentally demanding. You have to strategize maybe in a different way. But when you're in the trenches, there's nothing like that. So I can say that certain stages and ages are easier than others. So I'm not going to take that away from it. And another thing too is like, here we are heading into the teenage years, and that is, it's a mind F for me as a mother, knowing that I'm not going to be needed as much anymore as I was previously. And there are certain days, even here at home now, where my son is, I don't know, playing with his friends or hanging out with my husband or something. And I'm kind of just like, what am I going to do now? I guess I'll go, I don't know, read a book, because there's a time in your life where the motherhood aspect of it is so all consuming, right? Like you're running here, you're doing laundry, you're doing this, and you're getting a snack, you're getting them water, you're mama. And certain days are obviously like that more than others. But then there's definitely a time where it's a little bit more downtime. You notice the older your kids get, the more downtime you have as a mother. Now, maybe not necessarily if you're running carpool and back and forth to activities, that gets kind of crazy. But I do notice like the time at home when you're not acting as a chauffeur, there is a lot more downtime. And so I think as mothers, we have to get used to that not being needed as much anymore. It's interesting, there's the matrescence. Hopefully I'm not going to screw up that word, but the matrescence of when a woman becomes a mother and the role that we take on at that point. And it changes who we are as individuals. And now I'm noticing, and I don't know if there's a word for this, so maybe we can make up a word for it, but I notice now that as our children age and need us less, I find that my role is changing, and I feel like we need a new word for it. I don't know. You and I, we're going to have to look into this, because we need a word for our children becoming more independent, needing us less, but also not in a sad way, because that also then allows us to be able to do more of what we would want to do. One of my favorite hobbies is I study Italian on Duolingo. I've been doing it for 762 days. And, jokingly before when I said I'll sit and read a book, I actually won't sit and read a book. I'll do my Duolingo. I do read books, obviously, a lot, but I'm more often than not, I'm doing Duolingo. And that's the type of stuff that is wonderful, because when you have a 3-year-old, you're lucky if you sit down at all. And there's so many memes and jokes and videos about like moms never being able to sit down. But guess what? At a certain point, when your kids are older, you get to sit down like pretty often. I find maybe it's just me, but I find myself sitting down pretty often to be able to read or, I don't know, paint my nails or do whatever I want to do, because the children are off doing their own thing. They're out playing with their friends. They're at practice. Even now, I could drop my son off at practice and I go food shopping. I don't have to stay at practice like I did when he was 5-6 years old. So all of that stuff starts to change. You're starting to find yourself again. You're starting to find your identity. You're starting to find what happens next, for me as an individual. And so it's similar, like I said, to that transition of when you become a mother. And then there's that transition back into you as an individual. And obviously you're a mother. You'll always be a mother. But you have to transition back into you as an individual. And it is both beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. I recently read a quote that I'm totally going to butcher, but I'll just paraphrase it for you here, that motherhood is both beautiful and a heartbreak at the same time. And in that is, obviously you could talk about them as children, as babies, and all of the survival mode that we are in when they are babies, but then also as they get older and they're getting older, you're getting older, you see that they need you less, like all of those different things. And I really should probably have gotten that exact quote without like butchering it. But I saw that on Threads. So anytime I say I read something, it's usually because I read something on Threads. Twice today in this conversation here did I quote things that I've read on Threads. But going back to the beauty and heartbreak that is motherhood, is like, you want your kids to grow up and become independent people, independent thinkers, so that they could lead happy, successful, fruitful lives, and whatever that means to them, whatever that is their standards of happy and successful and meaningful. And that's all we can ask for. But at the same time, while they're doing that, then we're able to reclaim our roles as an individual to pursue the things that we love to pursue, that many times are sort of stuffed down while we're in that caretaker role. So my hope for everyone listening today is, one, thank you so much for listening, because I appreciate you so much. And if you ever have show ideas or you want to reach out to me, I am always around. You could DM me on Instagram. You can email me. I'll give you my email address. I am always around, and I would love, love, love to hear from you more often. But I will leave you with this thought, is that we are all on a journey, and everyone's road looks different. And it's not up to strangers on the internet to tell us which turns to take on our road. We need to stay focused on our road and do the things that not only bring us joy, but bring us the satisfaction in completing something positive that we could feel proud of, and that we can be present with our family. And when we look back, and when we're at the end of our road, turning around and then looking back at the beautiful life that we lived, that we could be proud of our decisions and proud of the time that we spent with our family, not because we had to go somewhere and take pictures at the pumpkin patch for Instagram, because we wanted to go to the pumpkin patch and spend time together as a family and be present. And if you didn't want to go to the pumpkin patch, hey, guess what? That's cool too. As long as you're having those little quiet moments with your family, that is the culmination of a beautiful life, right? You don't have to go to Disney World every single year to take a huge vacation and take all the big pictures. If you want to, that's awesome. And that's totally cool too. I mean, I love Disney World just as much as the next girl. But my point is that you don't have to try to validate your life through social media or have others validate their personal life decisions into your life through social media. Trust your gut. Ask for advice and ask for help if you need it from people that you trust, and just enjoy the ride. And that's all that any of us can do. And I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you next time, folks. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.
Bingo.
All right, Phil, we're recording now, so it's live. Go ahead. Pick on me the way that you want to.
Did I say that? I wouldn't say that to my son. Man, I mean, come on, man.
Just go. This isn't CBS.
All right, be quiet for a few seconds. Why would people want to listen to the Sims Complete podcast? Well, a couple things. One, if you like to see sons pick on their father, this might be the place. If you want to see a place where the father just kicks the out of his son, this would be the place. What do you like about it, Matt?
Ditto. Father-son dynamic duo talking about the game of football that we love and share and appreciate together. And, hey, it's an extension of what we did, right? Growing up, I was able to watch my father play football than obviously watch him as a broadcaster. And then he taught me the game of football and share the wisdom that he learned throughout his playing career. And, hey, sometimes we're full of it and sometimes we actually know a thing or two.
Well, we do a lot of research. At least I do. You're a little spotty, but you hang in there.
Yeah.
It's fun. I love doing this, and it's been awesome.
Sims Complete. Check us out wherever your podcasts are available on the Believe Network. Appreciate it. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.